Name is Anthony Waskie. Most people know me by my nickname Andy. I am a professor, an assistant professor at Temple University. I've been here for 10 years. My main assignment is to the language department in German, but I also teach Civil War history classes, both here at Temple and elsewhere, and have been a historian of Civil War history, particularly specializing in Philadelphia, for 25 years. I was a history major. I had 3 majors in college: German, Russian, and history. And so I always had a very deep and abiding interest and enthusiasm for history. And so when I was a kid, for example, Boy Scouts, we were taken to Gettysburg, and I was fascinated by the battlefield, and I didn't really know much about it at that point, but nevertheless it did motivate me to learn out as much as I could. Then in college, it was more of a general history. It wasn't specific to the Civil War per se. So I didn't really have enough time to really delve into that particular area. And I was very, very busy going to graduate school. I was in the Army Reserves. I did some study abroad, and I just never had time to really develop it in the first, 20 years of my professional career. I got out of the reserves, I finished my doctorate, and I had a little more time on my hands in the 80s. And so I began to take up the study of specific periods such as the Civil War and the genealogy of my family, which I always wanted to do. And discovered through my genealogical research that I had an ancestor who fought in the Civil War, which I never knew about. And so I began a very detailed and rigorous study of the Civil War, reading original texts, primary texts, reports, regimental histories, memoirs, and so on, and visiting locales where they were engaged, Gettysburg, Antietam, training camps, etc. Then I began to write some articles about this, and I became exposed to reenacting. And because I was visiting Gettysburg, for example, they were doing a living history encampment. This is in 1982. And when I went, and one of the rangers or one of the guides there said, "Don't make sure that you get down to this area and see the living history encampment." So I wonder what that is, and I'd never heard of anything like that. And so I went down, and there was this encampment, troops, tents, all their equipment, routine actions that they would have undertaken. And I was just blown away because it's everything that I've been reading about, researching about, but come alive, so to speak. And I asked a lot of questions, and I got kind of talking to some of the fellows there, and it turned out that they were from my area. They were from Bucks County. In fact, one of them went to the school where I was teaching at Pennsbury. And so that just solidified my interest, and I said to them, "Do you take volunteers? Do you take recruits?" And so I just became more and more involved. It became kind of like a hobby and a deep interest along with my teaching. And then all of a sudden, people were asking me to come and speak to classes, to groups that knew about my interest and my research. And so I began to do more research and to write articles and to publish them and to go around and speak to groups, Civil War roundtables, historical societies, and so on. And it just escalated and escalated. And I'm still doing it, although I've really cut back on the reenacting only because I'm getting old. But I, in the meantime, of course, I was teaching several courses at Holy Family College. At that time, it was college, now it's university. They had a Civil War Institute, and I was hired to teach some courses in the Civil War, and my specialty became Philadelphia in the Civil War. And so I did a lot of research in Philadelphia's role. It's a very, very large, very immense role. And by doing that, I came into contact with General Meade. General Meade was a Philadelphian, and he was one of the great commanders of the Civil War. He was the Union commander at Gettysburg, for example, the victorious Union commander, after having been appointed to the command 3 days before the battle. And I just felt that he had not really, no one seemed to know him, that he had been neglected by history. And so I decided that I would do something about that, and I would go on a campaign, a crusade, if you will, to resurrect his memory. And so I took on the persona of General Meade as a first-person living history presentation. I dress as Meade and speak as Meade and bring his story alive for people. Well, my wife is Carol Newman. She uses her previous name, and we were married over 5 years ago. I met her in the Civil War history community. She was the founder and vice president of the Delaware Valley Civil War Roundtable, which was a large group dedicated to informing themselves, educating themselves about Civil War history. They are also a co-sponsor of the Neshaminy Civil War reenactment. I've been very active with them. I started out speaking for them, and then I was asked to join their board of directors, which I did. And Carol was their vice president and a founder. And she was also in charge of setting up programs, so she was the program chair. And so I helped her with getting guest speakers and so on, because I have many contacts in the Civil War history community. And we became very friendly, very close friends and associates, and we did trips together and other kinds of things. Well, I always view Civil War reenacting, or any kind of historical recreations, Renaissance, Revolutionary War, World War II, as a chance to bring the history of that period alive, so to speak. Now, do we want to recreate war? No, we don't. But we do want to try to understand the sufferings and the tribulations and the crises and the other kinds of emotions that these men and some women went through during that period, but also to teach the public, because at most of these events and so on, people are invited. They're encouraged to come and view this as a learning experience. There's so pitifully little of these war experiences are taught in school. So it's an excellent opportunity for students, adults, anybody to come out and learn firsthand what actually transpired from experts in the field. They're living historians. They make that history come alive, three-dimensional. And so I've always enjoyed the opportunity to reach out to the public. I'm a lifelong teacher. Teaching is what I'm all about. It's my career, and I saw this as an extension of my teaching in the classroom.